This week on the Linux Action Show, we review the new EVO 4G with Froyo 2.2. Find out how this premier Android device stacks up against the competition and how well Sense UI integrates with Android. We tackle the big question: is Canonical an open source freeloader? We debate this heated topic. Plus, we break down the massive impact Android is having on the entire mobile industry. Plus, so much more. Oh, this week on the Linux Action Show. And welcome everybody to the Linux Action Show, Season 13, Episode 1. Episode uno, as they say in the subcontinent. My name is Brian Christopher.
Hey, Brian. My EVO 4G runs Linux.
AKA, I bought a new toy.
I bought a new toy. We're going to be reviewing it later in the show today.
We sure will.
You know what, everyone? I have to be honest with you. We're going to be a little Android heavy this episode. Consider it like a test balloon. If you guys like it, let us know. If you don't like it, let us know. And if you really like it, maybe one day we'll even have an Android action show.
Oh my goodness.
So it's a little test balloon in this week's episode of Linux Action Show, so let us know. But yeah, got the EVO 4G running Linux now.
Fancy. We'll talk about that more as the episode goes on.
How you doing?
That's just anticipation.
How you doing? You feeling good?
No, I feel terrible right now.
I'm actually impressed you're sitting here.
So this is... I've had a heck of a week, man.
Yeah, I know.
My allergies went crazy all week, right? I mean, come on, it's just allergies, no big whoop. And you'll notice we had Jupyter files this last Monday. Not the rest of the week.
Well,
Rest of the week didn't make it. I couldn't do it. My voice was not cooperating in the morning. I got up and I sounded...
Welcome to Jupyter Files.
Like Tuesday, I couldn't squeeze out a word.
Whoa, that'd have been a great show.
Wednesday, I just sounded dumb. I was like, I was sitting there and I'm like, I don't feel that great and I sound stupid. I'm like, I just don't want to do this show. I don't want this to be recorded. I thought about doing a live show just for the hell of it, but not recording it. But no.
Yeah,
but so I'm feeling a lot better in that regard.
That's good.
Throat's feeling good. Head's all clear.
Nice.
Horrible rib pain now. Just
I know.
Horrible. I went into the hospital actually this morning.
This morning before the show, and we do this show early.
I went in at about 5 a.m. Got out of the hospital just a little while ago.
Whoa.
Still have little IV marks and little tape marks and whatnot on me. And I have no idea what it is.
You're gonna go home and crash after this episode.
I'm like, doctor, why is my rib cage hurt so bad?
Right. Why do I hurt?
And they're like, well, you're not having a heart attack. I'm like, that's great, because I'm hurting on my right side, which I don't think is my heart side anyway.
Maybe that's where your second heart is.
Is that
your backup heart?
Am I a Time Lord?
Well, that's where I keep mine.
That's where you keep yours? Yeah. And I was like, okay, that's great. They're like, also, your liver's not failing. I'm like, really? Was my liver up here? Was my liver behind my boob? As far as, I'm not a doctor.
No,
I didn't take...
Maybe your liver's in your leg.
I didn't take doctoring 101. I never did that. But I do not believe my liver was behind my right boob. My right boob is awesome, everybody. This is common.
I think that's where you keep one of your lungs.
I might.
Yeah.
I don't know that for sure.
That's where I've stashed mine.
I do know, however, my liver's not there.
Oh.
That's all I really know. Because I have been trying to destroy my liver for years.
Right.
Through various alcoholic means.
And you learn where it's at when it hurts.
I know where it's at. That's not where actually, I don't know where it's at. No. It's down south, though. Yeah. It's above the family stuff and below my boobs.
I think it might be in my left butt cheek.
It could be.
I'm pretty sure I sit on it all the time.
It can move around. It's a slippery little devil. So they basically said, yeah, you're not dying. Go home.
Here's some.
All right. Well, if I'm not dying,
here's a pat on the head and a lollipop.
They didn't give me a lollipop or nothing.
I'm sorry,
so
dude.
I'm like, you know what? I'm not dying.
No.
So you know what I'm going to do?
Linux Action Show.
Linux Action Show.
And with that said, before we go too much further, we ought to say holla to our buddies over at the GoDaddy.com.
Absolutely, because even when I am in extreme pain, I like to talk about GoDaddy.com and how this episode is brought to you by GoDaddy.com, the world's largest freaking largest web host and domain name registrar. They're like Big Brother of web hosting. but in a good way.
Yeah.
Like if Big Brother from like 1984 was like super awesome and you wanted him to be Big Brother, that would be GoDaddy in regards to web hosting. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Did I
like my warm security blanket of domain hosting.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's how I'm thinking about it. Except that warm security blanket extends over the entire world.
That's a big blanket.
So here's what we're going to say about them.
Okay.
They offer everything,
Yeah.
and it's pretty cheap.
It is. It's pretty good.
$1.99 for a domain name. Other people want to charge $1 billion. I bet you there's a guy who will charge you $1 billion. That means that this is 500,000 times cheaper
That's a huge
than
savings.
that guy. That's a pretty big deal. Plus, if you type in Linux, they have little boxes.
Yeah.
Is that
No,
where you type it in?
It's this would be a visual representation.
That's
of
a
a
visual
box.
representation of a box. All right.
Yeah.
Well, if you type in just Linux in all caps, type it in all caps.
sorry, bro.
It's all uppercase. Just everywhere on their site. Eventually, that will give you 10% off your order.
Or Linux 20, get 20% off hosting plans.
How amazing
And
is
you
that?
know, we're a couple of guys. We can tell you
We're up to
it
no
works
good.
good because we've got a whole mirror of GoDaddy servers that mirror our content for Jupiter Broadcasting.
we sure as
We
heck
can say
do.
they rock. Now, you know what?
We have like one server that's not on GoDaddy. Sad about that.
it gets picked on. It's like the Rudolph of our servers.
It is.
It's the red-nosed
It is.
reindeer.
Yeah.
So we should kick off this rather Android-heavy episode of the Linux Action Show with my traditional app picks. This has kind of been a hit, so I'm going to...
Lay it on me, man.
I got a new one.
Lay it on me.
I've given you ones to do like file transfers, ones to track different various aspects, give yourself notifications. This one's built to turn your phone into a personal robot assistant. It's called Edwin. And
Edwin.
It builds on
It's a
top
great
of
name.
I know, right? It builds on top of the Android's voice recognition system and lets you do things like, Edwin, how many cups are in 5 gallons? And,
Yeah.
you know, those kinds of crazy things, get map directions. And the whole thing is Edwin then takes all of the data that it finds and speaks it back to you. So if you're driving,
that's cool.
you don't have to read the screen. And Edwin understands regular expression questions like, how
I
many
dig
miles
that.
am I from the nearest McDonald's? Beep, boop. You are 1 mile.
No, wait. When you
from the
say
nearest
it understands
McDonald's.
regular expressions,
I mean,
you're-
like voice, like you can speak to it. Like,
Oh,
not-
you mean natural English?
Yeah, natural English.
I can't
natural
actually
expression.
use regex. and
No. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cross the streams there.
Dude, but how awesome would it be if you could speak regular
had a feeling you
expressions
might
into
think that.
Edwin and it would start parsing everything for you?
Right.
And I'm like, Edwin, dictate. Give it a whole paragraph and then stop. Apply regular expression.
Yep.
/ that and just start laying into it.
If that made it out in the
Awesome.
Android, I would make that an Android app pick. Now, to give you guys a solid follow-up, because I want to give you a follow-up to Edwin, I've recently started using a new instant messenger program called eBuddy Messenger.
Yeah.
And it's actually just kind of a slick multi-client instant messaging program. It's free.
That's great.
Runs in the background.
That's
Looks
great.
Good,
Yeah.
Runs good.
Yeah. Hey, you know what instant messenger I run on my internet tablet?
What's that?
Pigeon.
Pigeon?
Yeah. You know why?
Why?
Because it's powerful and it's just Linux.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good instant
Yeah.
messenger.
And I can just use Linux desktop apps and they're awesome.
That's a good job.
Yeah. Thanks.
These apps are really awesome. They're in the Android app market for free, and you can download it now. eBuddy will be in the show notes.
You see what I did right there?
But if you have an N900 tablet like the B-Man
Or an
over here,
N810.
or an N810,
Or an
like the
N800.
B-Man, or an N800,
The N810 WiMAX edition's pretty pimpin'.
you could run Pigeon.
Can't buy that
So that's your
anymore,
Mamo pick of the week too. We just threw that in there.
Mamo pick of the week.
Look at us getting
Dude, you know what Mamo pick of the week is?
What's that?
Mamo? Free Heroes 2.
Oh, okay. Tell me about it.
You remember Heroes of Might and Magic?
No.
What? Really?
Jog my memory, it might come back.
It's a role playing game. It's a strategy role playing game. You go around a map with heroes and you conquer towns, and it's a totally awesome role play strategy game.
With the specific heroes that have special powers and abilities?
Yeah.
I think I'm kind of vaguely
And
remembering.
it's very, very cool. It's it's in the Might and Magic universe.
That sounds like a great tablet
Epic game. There's an open source version of it.
Killer.
Called Free Heroes 2. Can run it on the tablets. Runs full speed. Awesome. Gorgeous. Best game available for any handheld
sounds like a good
device
one.
right now. It's awesome.
Boom. There you go. There's a
And
Mamo
it's free
pick.
and open source and Linux powered.
You gotta love that.
That's right.
Okay, everyone, with all of that, let's do the news.
What's new in the news this week?
Oh, right, Brian. Our top story on the news docket for this week. The Gnome Shell has been delayed until next year.
Oh, it
About
certainly
March.
has.
Now, this Gnome Shell is it's been under development, sort of the new look, the new approach for the Gnome desktop.
It is.
And,
it is.
They just felt like they thought they were going to originally near a release date here pretty soon, but they felt, it still needs some more time in the oven. So they delayed it till March. Now, I thought we'd take this opportunity to talk about Gnome Shell because it's actually not something we've talked about very much on the Linux Action Show.
And now's a good time because now they're working through some new mock-ups. They're modifying the look a little bit. Now, what we've got here is not the final. What you're seeing now is not the final Gnome Shell 3.0. There is quite a lot of time because it's next year when this is going to be final. But they are working to kind of shore this up right now.
Yeah, I guess it's the idea is they're trying to do a more, I think they call it like a task or objective-oriented interface. Not object-oriented, but objective. Like, these are the tasks that I'm trying to accomplish type of interface. I find it to be very...
It's fine. It's like it's like the little UIs that a lot of companies will put on top of your machine when you get it and you unload it so you can use your full desktop. That's what it reminds me of. It takes up a ton of screen real estate. Go back to the screenshot real quick. It takes up a ton of screen real estate. Here, if you look up top here, that's your unusable top area.
Right.
I'm like, really? Because on my netbook or even my laptop, I don't have that to spare.
That's really
now, my
good.
desktop, my monitor is huge, and it's fine. And
Does
I
that
actually
maybe
wouldn't mind.
slide down when you search? I haven't seen it in action, but I would hope that gap doesn't remain there.
No, I think it does.
To stay there,
because it's part of the overall dock experience. Same with the dock on the side. It's part of the Gnome Shell experience. It causes me pause. I look at this and I think, well, why? Why this? I don't understand the logic behind it.
It's potentially because it almost has more of a smartphone feel to it, a netbook feel to it.
It does.
Maybe that makes it easier for an upcoming audience, for a new set of users.
It might be. It is much more simplified. It is much more easy to much simpler to discover what you want to do.
It does seem
and
much
that's
easier.
great. That's great. I see the definite benefits of that.
And it's
much
not a
like,
direct copy of another desktop. It's not like a KDE4 clone.
It reminds me a lot of looking at things like Ubuntu Netbook Remix or why is the word escaping me? That really
Jolly Cloud?
Jolly Cloud.
Yeah.
Looks like a lot like the new Jolly Cloud UI. And it has that look and feel to it.
Exactly what I thought too.
It looks a lot like Migo, it has that look, which is great and fine for a device.
Right.
But not for your desktop computer. And what I find really intriguing here is how far they want to go down the let's simplify it realm.
Yeah.
Which is the exact opposite of where the KDE guys are going.
Maybe not intentionally, though, on KDE's part.
But at KDE, they're trying to make things simple with like default setups.
Yeah.
But what they're really pushing is, here's plasmoids and everything's a configurable, rotatable, resizable plasmoid, and your desktop isn't even a desktop anymore, and it's a whole new plasmoid container thing, and you can do a lot of things with it. This is taking the almost exact opposite approach of let's not expand the functionality, let's just make it simpler to discover and perform specific key tasks. It's hard-coded.
It does feel like an interface that sits on top of GNOME because there's still the traditional gedit applications that live outside this interface. So this really is a shell that sits on top of GNOME to discover a lot of the GNOME desktop functionalities and to maneuver around GNOME. Is what it seems like, because you still will break out to Nautilus and things like that to run those applications. So they're still there. It's a lot like you said up front. It's almost like how HTC puts Sense UI on top of Android or Windows Mobile.
Now the look is good. It looks nice. I'm not gonna say it looks crummy or anything like that. And I also want to reserve judgment until we really see some functional versions, some functional beta versions with this current look and feel, this proposed look and feel. But I don't see me using it.
Cincius, I think you pronounced his name in the chat room, is mentioning that he thinks it looks like it would work really well with the touchscreen. I totally agree. It does seem like it would work really well with that.
It seems like it would.
It does kind of seem like an answer to the netbook question when nobody's asking that netbook question anymore. Has the buzz around netbooks just kind of been fading out? Like they just become a standard smaller form factor laptop.
Yeah, well, the tablets came along, and the tablets took over that buzz space.
Yeah.
And this would work well in the tablet space.
But netbook screen resolutions are just going to get better and better, and you're not going to need custom UIs for netbooks.
Here's the thing. Even with the really low-res netbook UIs that are out there, say Ubuntu 10.04 works great.
GTK seems to resize on smaller screens a lot better.
It does an excellent job of it. And KDE4 even. KDE4 looks great on a netbook. What's the problem that we're trying to solve here, guys? I don't see it.
Sith in the chat room points out that while this seems like a netbook UI solution, in that space, my personal belief is that MeeGo is going to own the Linux netbook space down the road. So this is a difficult spot for GNOME to be in because they need to move forward. They need to do something that's not a direct copy, and why not streamline it, make it easier to use at the same time? I honestly am not convinced this is the answer, but I'm not even sure what the question is.
That's what I'm wondering about.
Yeah.
I really like what GNOME has done recently over the last few years of steady, continuous improvements.
Improving what already works.
They have something that exists and works and continue to move forward. Now, I like the idea. Here's GNOME 3.0, fresh start. Let's not worry too much about backwards compatibility.
You got to do that from time to time.
It's an old API set. We need to clean off the crust and really refresh it. That's great. I'm 100% behind that. Add in some new default widgets. Maybe make something like WebKit default and built into GNOME. A few really major enhancements to it. Awesome. Love it. Yeah. Really can get behind that. New look and feel. Like that. New rendering engine, like that. I can really get behind that stuff. But this, I don't. Changing the default user experience so dramatically, but not in a way that really makes sense. It doesn't. I don't understand what they're going with. Why not just not worry about it? Do all the other improvements that they need to do. I mean, come on, GNOME, you're winning the war here. I mean, you're beating KDE into the ground, right? I mean,
for now, yeah.
I mean, KDE is awesome.
Maybe not with this transition.
A lot of us listening to the show and doing the show love KDE.
Yeah.
But most of us.
But day to day, we're doing GNOME as our desktop.
The majority of us do not use KDE hardly at all.
We look at it and go,
to play with it.
You look at that and go, boy, they're doing a lot of innovation in KDE4. There's a lot of great features.
It's very usable. It's cool.
Okay, now I'm going to go do some work. I'm going to use GNOME.
Yeah, I'm gonna reboot back into GNOME.
That's what I do.
So why screw the pooch on this one? Why throw the baby out with the bathwater? Why not just keep getting better? Keep doing what you're doing. Make 3.0 an extra big jump. Maybe don't do a release for a full year and make 3.0 an extra big improvement. Sure.
I mean, I think one of the advantages the open source development community has is there's not that yearly product release cycle that it means that if they don't hit that release date, the company loses X millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Maybe that's changing. Maybe there's forces now in the Linux community where there's a lot of products based around these open source products that are pushing on them, giving them pressure to innovate and make big changes so they can put big features on their boxes or whatever it is that's forcing them to go this direction. And I'm totally willing to hang back, see how it goes, and maybe I'll love it. Maybe I'll find a way that works in my workflow. But right now I'm looking at going, boy, I hope I can turn that off. I hope I turn it off. Yeah,
you can.
But
you can.
What if it went down the road
default
5 years from now? I mean, I always worry about that kind of thing.
See, that's the thing, though. That's the beauty. I don't worry about that too much. If they really do go that route, the KDE guys will respond with, "Hey, everybody,
True.
We have a nice, easy migration path for all you GNOME people who feel left out in the cold."
And there might even be like a fork of the GNOME Classic desktop.
Let's be honest. A lot of KDE users jumped over to GNOME with KDE when KDE 4 came out. Because GNOME was like, hey, KDE guys.
And KDE 4.0 was pretty rocky.
It was real rocky. It was real rough. But now
they're getting to that polished endpoint.
Is awesome.
Yeah, just in time for GNOME to become kind of buggy again.
Yeah.
Could be an interesting swing, couldn't it?
The great thing is now, we aren't at that place we were at 5 years ago where a GNOME app on a KDE desktop looks so out of place.
Right.
We've got compatible themes, so you can use, Aurora or whatever theme you're using. Great rendering toolkits on both sides.
And more web apps, so it doesn't matter.
And better integration between the different toolkits. So you can have, your GTK status items down in a KDE bar now. Yeah. Everything
KDE
looks
apps
right.
can use GStream at back end. I mean,
exactly.
It's pretty interesting to watch. I guess it kind of transitions into. There's been a really heated debate online over the last week or so that Canonical is sort of just this leech on the back of GNOME, and
You want to talk about this
yeah,
story now?
Let's move into that
All right.
because somebody brought up the point of, well, imagine if Canonical had just used KDE, then they wouldn't have had all these problems. And he lists out how they would have used the main issue people have around Canonical is primarily shipping Ubuntu, GNOME distribution, and then they're looking at it going, but we're looking at the contributions back to GNOME that Canonical's making upstream. We're only seeing 1% of code commits to the GNOME project from Canonical.
Yep.
And they even went as far as building out this contribution chart that represents the different
Which,
groups.
by the way, super ugly and really hard to read. There's so many colors on it that are like the ugliest possible colors. If you look at the bottom of this, there's the link in the show notes. You know how you can build a chart and you pick and you pick really pretty colors.
I love when you start like that.
And what they did is they went in here and said, okay, we need a green. What's that green that makes your eyeballs hurt? That's the one. Okay, now find the color of text we could overlay on that so you can't read it. You're looking.
I know.
What the F does that say?
I know, dude.
Now this is where we in the open source world get a bad name because we put out a really cool piece of information like this.
Right.
That's very valuable and very informative, and we retard it up. It doesn't even make sense. Things don't line up. I can't read half of it.
I know.
Annoying. All right, back to the topic.
So that chart indicates that Canonical contributes 1% back to the upstream GNOME project.
Right.
Now you figure they ship their main distro based on GNOME. That must be disproportionately low. Red Hat contributes around 16 to 17% of the code that's in the upstream GNOME base.
Yes.
Now, this code that this stat generally reignited a already kind of rumbling fire and just threw gas onto it. Now, if you look at it, one thing to keep in mind with these stats is that 1% is only the submitted patches that the GNOME maintainers have actually applied to the GNOME base code. So Canonical may have sent 1 million changes and they only selected a couple of them. That doesn't appear to be the case, but that's one thing to consider. Additionally, they're comparing how Red Hat has about 17% to 16% of the contributions.
Yep.
But in terms of company size, Red Hat's also 25 times larger than Canonical.
Right. Which means if you actually do the math, Red Hat is actually contributing less per person and less per market capital than Canonical.
Now, I don't think... So here's the breakdown, just so folks here. Also coming in, Novell contributes 10% back to the GNOME base. Collabora is 5%.
Now, Collabora, to me, is the king in all this. Because Collabora is a cool little company that really is dedicated to pushing Linux forward and a variety of projects. They do some great work.
Okay.
I just want to. I think they deserve a little bit of pimpage, just because they do some doo-doo. I said doo-doo just now. I did, didn't I? They do some excellent work, and it's worth noting. I feel that the aggression towards Canonical
It's pretty hostile.
is off the charts.
Mark Shuttleworth had a blog post called
Tribalism, yeah.
And fighting within, and how the open source community will sit here and battle over these things internally while the rest of the industry, he didn't quite say it like this, but the rest of the industry is moving forward.
Yeah.
And they're looking back, and Apple and Microsoft look back and go, look at those adorable open source hippies, how they fight amongst each other while we're shipping billions of dollars worth of products.
Yeah, that's really what it is.
And then
this is a great example of it, because really what you have here are people who are bitter, people who are annoyed, and call it whatever you want. This is the truth.
Well, here's the flip
They're
side.
bitter that Ubuntu has the market share it does, so they're attacking Canonical.
What if Canonical is developing considerable improvements to GNOME, keeping those in-house inside their Launchpad system and things like that, and then just saying to the GNOME community, hey, if you want this code, come and get it. But if Ubuntu is making significant improvements that could be being better applied to the mainstream, upstream GNOME code base, you would have the rest of the Linux community and ecosystem getting those improvements.
Yes.
Now, what John O'Bacon, friend of the show, old-time Lug Radio host, says is that primarily what Canonical works on is not core changes to Ubuntu itself, but actually changes to a lot of the things that sit on top of Ubuntu, like the Notify OSD, messaging menu, indicator applets, the Me menu, Unity system.
And those are not being tracked in these sorts of stats. These are user experience sort of things.
And what comes up here is the GNOME folks are like, well, we don't give an S that you're developing applets because with Gnome Shell, we're dropping applets.
Right.
Applets are old now. And it's interesting to watch the GNOME community talk about the contributions that Canonical's making as completely irrelevant because, well, that's not the future anymore. But it is exactly what Canonical is shipping today and every other distribution. So it is very much the present for current users. So the fact that they're making improvements to applets is a good thing.
It's the present and the future for the fall releases that are coming up in a couple of months. So it's the future.
And Ubuntu hasn't even decided that they're going to get behind Gnome Shell yet.
Hell, the GNOME people haven't even decided what Gnome Shell is going to kind of look like and be laid out like yet. So how can any company, how can any distro say, oh yeah, I'm behind Gnome Shell? Gnome Shell could be rad. It could be the best thing ever since cinnamon bread, which by the way is awesome. I love cinnamon bread.
Yeah.
This could be better. This could be like, you know what?
Cinnamon
I would
bread
give
with
up
butter on it.
I would
Toasted.
with cinnamon butter.
Oh yeah, buddy.
With then cinnamon on top, and then you broil it a little bit, so it's like cinnamon. So
it gets crunchy.
God, that'd be good. It could be so good that I'd be willing to give up that and say I will never have that again to have me some Gnome Shell. But we don't know. So when people start attacking Canonical like this, it makes me stop and it makes me think, who the F are you guys?
Right.
Like really, you're coming after a company who's you're saying you're comparing Canonical to Red Hat. Let's be clear on this. Red Hat makes a living from closed source Windows software. Not entirely, but in part. Now, if you're going to attack a company for open source, that's something to attack that's valid. The other side is then you say to these specific projects, to say GNOME, Canonical is putting out 1%, whereas Red Hat is putting out 15%. Just as an example.
Okay.
Red Hat is bigger, more than 15 times bigger.
Right.
Than Canonical. Therefore, Canonical is doing more than Red Hat per person, per resource. So realistically,
but does it matter if they are genuinely holding like code within their walls, not closed, locked walls, but just within?
They're not holding anything within their walls.
Okay.
If they make changes to open source projects, they make those changes available. That's the nature of the beast.
I know. When you're developing GPL software, you can't really be too butthurt when people take your code and then make their own apps off of it, as long as they make that code available again.
Exactly.
I know.
And Canonical is being good about it and doing it. Now
it is kind of one of those things where like, oh really? If you're gonna be like this, maybe you shouldn't have chose the GPL.
Seriously, you should have chosen an entirely different license.
I mean, you don't hear Canonical running around saying, Mint stole our code and they're making a distribution on it.
No, you know what? And you know, and I've talked with a couple of people at Canonical from time to time. I've talked with Jono about it. Ubuntu and Canonical, those teams, they love it.
But
they love those distros spinning off. They love, you know, Kubuntu and Mint and all these other distros spinning off. They love it.
As according like Adam Fusion in the chat room implies that, you know, you could potentially have a situation here where Mint is actually contributing more to the upstream code base than actual Canonical and Ubuntu do.
That's fine.
I think that would be inappropriate though, because it does go against the spirit of the sharing and collaboration in open source.
You know what? Honestly,
it doesn't go against the technical law of it, but it does go against the, you know, we're going to use your code, but here's the improvements we want.
I disagree from one key standpoint. If you have this distro here, you have distro, it's like you have, let's say, Debian. Here's a Debian. There's all these distros that spawn off of Debian, right?
Mm-hmm,
I would be really okay if Debian as itself actually contributed less overall code than those individual distros that build off of Debian into the Debian
because the net effect is still
large. Debian is still acting as the clearinghouse of what officially gets into Debian, and that in and of itself is a lot of work.
You can't also discount the contribution that Ubuntu has made to the public image of Linux.
Right. Or look at Linux as the kernel itself. Linus is the gatekeeper.
Right.
Linus Torvalds acts as the gatekeeper. All the big check-ins are approved by him. That is a ton of work. If he never checked in a single line of code, well, he'd be checking it in, but if he never wrote any lines of code and all he did was approve changes, that's a ton of work
Still
and
important.
valuable.
Yeah.
So I think this is all moot. It's ridiculous. I'm not going to go after Red Hat for contributing 15% instead of what I feel they should be at 25%. That's ridiculous. All these companies are contributing.
Yeah.
All of these companies, all of them, Every single one, even the companies that are the smallest on these lists, should be applauded. We should pat them on the back for the work they're doing. And we should be happy that the entire open source world, Linux in general, the Linux desktops, GNOME and KDE are continuing to improve because of the monetary and time and manpower effort that these companies are putting in. Instead of fighting amongst ourselves and stabbing each other in the backs, it is childish. And the people who put together these charts that are, I'm okay with the charts. Knowing what's happening is fine. But this is ridiculous. This is absolutely childish,
really upset about it.
And it is stupid. And the people who put this together and are up in arms, and I'm not going to name all of the bloggers who have been blogging about this incessantly, but you guys are being little dicks. Knock it the hell off and get on to something that's actually important. If you want to debate about the features that companies are focusing on, cool. That's important to do because it helps direct our priorities. But do not sit around here and quabble about how many thousands of lines of code one person does when another person does 1,000 more lines of code.
I guess it's easier to bitch than it is to code. I don't know what the situation here is. And I'm not trying to point fingers at anyone in particular because it's not just these groups that do this. It just continually happens. And I'm sure it happens internally everywhere, different groups and projects, not just open source. But because we function so much in the public, it is for everyone to watch. It's theater for people to just sit there from a voyeuristic spot on the web and watch. Exactly. It damages the reputation.
It damages us big time.
All right, I've got a lightning round of Android news before we get into the EVO review.
We got some Android news?
Some quick ones here.
All right,
nothing too
lay it on me. Make it really awesome because I need some uplift right now.
Let's take a look at the impact
I'm gonna drink my Snapple from Snapple Corporation, who really desperately, I hear, wants to advertise on the Linux Action Show right here. This is a Snapple. Here's the great thing about it. It's so delicious. It's just so refreshing. And it's made from the best stuff on earth, I hear.
Only Snapple can wet Brian's palate so he can yell at people.
You know what's interesting about that? Linux is made from the best code on earth. Snapple is made from the other best stuff on earth.
They say that, but then you read the ingredients, it doesn't seem like the best
But you know what? I'm willing to... Dude, I'm trying to get them to advertise for this. You're kind of screwing up here.
It is fantastic.
It's amazing.
Maybe if they advertised, I'd have a different opinion.
Probably. I think it's great anyway.
All right, let's lightning round this Android news. So I think at this point, Linux has got it, or I mean, Google's got to be like the #1 Linux distributor, because they're doing like something like 30,000 handsets a day are
it's
activated.
It's
crazy.
It's a lot, yeah.
And because of that, Sprint's subscriber growth has grown for the first time in 3 years due to phones like the EVO 4G. Yeah, they've been in the tanks. As soon as they launch an Android phone, their numbers start going up.
That was the noise of a rocket, by the way.
Motorola's earnings skyrocket 600% over last year thanks to the Droid. They've made 162 million.
Look at that.
Compared to 26 million the same time last year. 8.3 million Droid phones were sold. The Droid X is doing great. Here's the other big stat. Google itself is set up and preparing to make $10 billion a year from Android. The operating system that they give away for free with no licensing attached, they expect to make $1 billion, said Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google, just recently.
Advertising.
Pretty wild.
Advertising and search traffic.
So they're
getting themselves into embedded markets where they're expanding their default browser coverage, which is their default search engine, and piping more advertising through it.
There's more people that have cell phones than use Google web search.
And you know what's awesome about that? Nothing. I hate it.
I know, right?
I hate it so much.
Like the one aspect of it is like, wow, look at people building an entire huge industry off of Linux.
Great. Love that. You know what I hate?
Ads on my Linux? I know.
Seriously. Well, because, I mean, if you look at it, and this is side note, Apple, for all intents and purposes, for people who watch the Apple rumors, it looks like it's going down the advertisements on your desktop route.
On their phone, for sure. They have iAds on.
So they've been pushing intense amounts of bandwidth-heavy, CPU-heavy advertisements on their phones. Okay, so they got that. And they have these little patent things for the exact same thing built into Mac OS X on the desktop.
You know, Microsoft has those too. It's getting dangerous. It's getting scary.
It's getting scary. So we're gonna have in a couple of years, we're gonna have Windows and Macs and iPhones and Windows mobile phones filled with ads, just to the gills. And what's our alternative on the mobile space? Well, we have two of them. Well, we have three basically. We have Symbian, Migo, and Android. Android is established, big, has a large market share.
Huge momentum.
However, ads up the butt, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse because Google should make it worse because they're a company that needs to make money.
Yep. And Microsoft's talked about they have a mobile advertising program that they'll probably roll into Windows Mobile 7. So your only real, and who knows, I guess, and what's scary about the Google one actually is a phone maker could take a Migo phone and they could actually integrate Google Ads on it. It doesn't have to be an Android-only phone.
No, but on the Migo phone, you could rip those out.
That's true.
Immediately.
But you could also rip them out on an Android phone. You just have to run a custom ROM.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is hard.
It is
to
hard.
do. And most people aren't going to do. But and also may become less possible.
Easier on some phones. Like now they have a one-click routing on some phones. But yeah, it's not a future I'm not. It's not a future I'm looking forward to. It's going to be advertising heavy.
It sounds awful. It sounds. I mean, we advertise on these shows. I mean, because
we try to be reasonable about it.
But I mean, we try to do it as little as possible, and we only advertise things that we know you guys will use. We advertise GoDaddy on the show. Why? Because come on, you're watching Linux Action Show. You probably have a website. You're probably an IT guy. You probably are setting it up for your company.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Notice what we're not advertising? We're not advertising Visa.
Right.
I mean, I make a joke about advertising Snapple, but let's be honest. It doesn't really make any sense to advertise Snapple.
No.
Well,
I mean, unless they want to.
Unless they want to for like $1 million.
Maybe they could change our minds. No, but
even then, we're not going to advertise a Ford pickup truck. However, with all these phones and everything like that, you're going to get nonstop advertisements for the latest Disney princess movie and Ford pickup trucks, and then Toyota and Visa, and then a debt consolidation company.
Right.
And that's your future. Or think about this way. What would you prefer, that or an ad-free system you spend a little bit of money on? You spend $60 once, you get an ad-free system. What would you rather have? I would rather pay the money and have no ads.
We'll see, right?
But they're not giving me that option.
I guess the hope is that consumer pushback would be enough to prevent this from happening. But if they're expecting to make $10 billion, we'll see.
That's what this is. This is the consumer pushback right now.
Yeah.
Everybody go forth, send this out,
and push.
Edit this up. Make a musical remix of it where I'm like consumer pushback.
Ads are bad.
Ads are bad.
Ads are bad.
Ads are bad. Yeah, seriously, mix it up. Do whatever you've got to do.
Yeah.
Even if it's not this show. I mean, there needs to be a pushback on this because it destroys
the experience.
It
wastes real estate on a cramped device.
It lowers your battery life.
There's tracking involved.
Everything. I mean, it honestly, it lowers your freedom. At that point, it doesn't matter that Linux is the kernel under Android. It doesn't actually give you a benefit then anymore. It starts to take away that amazing benefit. Like a Migo device or a Maimo device or what have you, benefit. Direct, tangible, open source, awesome benefit.
Yep.
This, not so much.
Until Nokia and Intel figure out that they need to launch an ad platform. Then we're screwed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a very, very bad day.
All right, Brian.
But Migo, open source.
That's true.
The platform is open source.
And I think there's always going to be...
Not Android. Android is closed.
Because people like us are always going to have a certain reservation about that, there's always going to be, hopefully, like the Migo solution or the custom Android ROMs that you can load or this or that, or hack your iPhone and pull that code out. But it's always going to be that extra thing we have to do if you are going to go that route.
Yep. Which I'm okay with doing, to be honest. It makes me worried. It makes me annoyed. And I may be the stodgy nerd in the closet.
Wait, what?
The nerd closet. Where I'm nerdy. That's it.
All right, Brian.
That's all I'm doing in the closet.
That's all the news.
What are we talking about right now?
This week.
In a world filled with Android phones, one phone sticks out amongst the rest. It's bigger. It's clunkier. But its screen is kind of pretty. That, of course, is the HTC Sprint 4G phone.
EVO 4G.
The first phone with 4G, according
right.
to all of the advertisements in the world.
No, I do believe it's true. So I guess that's maybe a good place to start is what the heck is 4G? It's going to depend on your carrier. In Sprint's case, it means like a combination of cellular services and WiMAX.
Right.
The EVO 4. So, and you know what? Here in my area, I get about 4.5, 4.8 megabits on my freaking wireless service.
Yeah. I get better than that with Clear,
in downtown,
which is WiMAX.
In downtown, in like a better signal area, like even like downtown, I'm even like downtown Marysville, I get 8 megabits.
So worth noting. So this is Sprint's WiMAX coverage, which was Zome, the XOHM platform, which was essentially the same specification but a little bit of different implementation as Clearwire.
Actually, I think they work together for a lot of it.
They're supposed to work together.
Yeah.
There's some issues with certain devices working on each other's thing. Mostly that's probably that Sprint and Clear are trying to lock each other out now or something. But I do find it interesting that they're using that they've got the 4G rocking, and that speed is incredible. It's highly worthwhile.
And then when you combine that with the tethering functionality, there's some real practical use for that.
Oh, big time. Or just video conferencing. Is there a front-facing camera on there?
Yeah, one guy right there.
Have you been able to do video conferencing?
It does. Well, I've been able to
like Skype?
Fring.
Can you?
Skype doesn't support the camera yet, but Fring does. So I've been able to make Fring calls, and then also Quick does. So I can do
Skype has the same thing on the little Nokia N900. Front-facing camera. Other apps do it.
I know.
Skype doesn't do it.
Skype does not.
Has enough processing power.
Yep.
It's got the hardware specs, the bandwidth's there. Skype doesn't do it.
I know, dude.
That's really annoying.
I know.
Skype would make so many big waves if they came up with a video chat
If I could Skype to a desktop for using my front-facing
man.
camera. The front camera is 1 megapixel.
Killer.
It's okay. The back camera, however, is 8 megapixels.
Nice.
And I'm a dumb boy. Yesterday, Jeremy and I were playing around with the camera, and I stood in front of our studio lights, which are super bright. Like, you don't even want to look.
Did you burn them?
No, he took a picture of me standing in front of the studio light, and the camera, this little freaking 8 megapixel cell camera, was actually able to aperture down correctly. And
Really?
actually, you could see me in front of the cameras. Normally, with any camera, if you take a picture with something that bright behind the object, that light blows out the object so it's dark.
Nice.
And this was actually able to do it.
That's really nice.
Also shoots 720p video, which is kind of handy for us, which is
That's great.
getting more and more common. But it's
I
nice.
like that.
The phone itself is equipped with this is really the difference here between like a lot of your Android phones is they come with something called HTC phones come with something called Sense UI, and before I ever owned an HTC phone was really negative on Sense UI because I felt like you're bolting on a UI on top of a product that eventually I'm just going to have to dial down and get to the main OS.
Didn't the Sense UI, that started over on Windows Mobile?
It did, yeah.
Yeah, so it was kind of a thing they put on top of Windows Mobile like 6 or something like that.
And Windows Mobile needed it.
Windows Mobile's so ugly.
And what they
Oh my gosh, guys. We should literally do like 5 episodes about how ugly Windows Mobile like 6 point whatever is. It's just so ugly.
They actually, Sense UI, I don't know if I'd ever buy another Android phone without it. I'm not kidding. I am not S-ing you.
Is that nice, huh?
So check this out. Now, people at home, I apologize, but what they do is Sense UI, it takes the address book entries and it gets really smart about it and is able to link accounts. So like say my wife has a Twitter account, an Exchange account for our company.
Yeah.
She has a Google account. She has a Facebook account.
It's all under one account.
All under one account. And they link it all together. So now when my wife calls me, I get her latest picture along with her latest status update right on the call screen when she's calling. All that stuff. It's really, really slick.
You know what else does that? Memo devices.
Yeah, a lot of them are doing that. The iPhone doesn't.
Yeah.
Android.
Well, the iPhone's kind of the retard device. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it's the device for people who don't want features and want a crappy phone.
Yeah, that battery's dead on the Droid, but
we know what it does.
It comes with a bunch of really great widgets. The Sense UI is more integrated than I expected. I actually thought I would probably turn it off because you can turn it off.
I assumed you would.
I love it.
I loaded the Sense UI up on one of my Windows Mobile
That's
phones.
the last time I had experience with it.
And it was good, but it took up so many resources I had to turn it off because
Right.
it ran so slow. So I just assumed that that's how it was here.
This thing's rocking a 1 gigahertz Snapdragon processor with 512 megabytes of system RAM. So the responsiveness is about as good as it gets for an Android device.
Really?
It's probably about on par with the Droid X. The reason I went with this device over the Droid X, both have a 4.3-inch screen, and I'm not going to lie to you guys, a 4.3-inch screen is very large in your pocket. It's also just about the right size for everything else you do. Email, the virtual keyboard's larger, reading comics is better.
Here's the thing,
browsing the web.
So reading comics kind of a big deal for me, or books. I don't know if you guys can see that at all, but the screen resolution, what is it? It's like 800 by 480.
Yeah.
And it's a high enough resolution where if you turn the thing on its side, little landscape, and do the comics so they're fit to width. So any picture. So if you got like a PDF manual, scale it to fit to width so you can read the PDF manual clearly.
Yeah.
And it's small. I mean, granted, it is a smaller screen than you'd expect to to read something like that on. But it's such a high resolution. You can do it.
Yeah.
You can see the outlines of the letters. You can see what they look like. It's not pixelated and weird looking. They did a really nice job with it.
It also has a stand on the back where you can kick this little stand out and
right there.
Yeah, you can set it up.
Watch. Here we go.
Boom.
And boom, right there.
Sprint tries
that up.
Sprint,
and it fell right over.
Sprint's included and bundled
Stand
in
did not work there.
a TV service that's free, and that's actually Sprint's impressed me the most with is their plans. $70, I get unlimited text, unlimited data, unlimited picture messaging, and I get unlimited calls to cell phones and unlimited calls after 7, and it's like 700 minutes during the daytime.
That's not bad.
$70.
Yeah, that's really not
free
bad.
TV service. Also has a built-in FM radio as long as you have a headsets in. It uses those as the antenna, so you can sit in Seattle area. Some of our talk stations are on FM, so it's really nice to get a little FM reception when you're rocking it too.
You know what it sounds a lot like?
Got a little flashlight app, so you can control the dual LED on the back.
That's cool. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
You know, feature-wise, all the features you've been describing sound an awful lot like an N900 with less freedom.
It's very feature
and no
rich.
keyboard.
It is a lot. It has a lot of Nokia inspiration to it. I think the Sense UI does. As far as performance goes, it's nice and thin. It's got a nice removable battery. I don't know if I can. Yeah, I can. It's got the back here.
It's red. Look at that.
Even the back is designed right. HTC really.
It looks like a Ferrari.
Yep. They really. Oh, look, a second. Oh, that's cool. Secondary ports. It comes with an 8 GB SD. Wow. But you can replace that up to 32 gigs. This is probably the nicest phone I've ever owned. I really like it. It's a fantastic implementation of Android.
That's pretty cool.
I have a early build of the update that's coming out next week. So if you guys are listening to this now, about Monday or Tuesday, Froyo will be coming out over the air for this if everything goes as scheduled. I got an early look at it. It's
because
faster.
You're special, right?
Yeah, because I found it online.
Oh, okay.
It's faster. It feels probably about twice as fast as it did before, and before it already felt like the fastest phone I'd ever used.
That's impressive.
The Android still lags out in a few places. Like when it's working really hard, I'll try to slide down the notification screen and it lags out.
On the multitasking side of things, how many apps? I mean, you get like 5 or 6 apps running. How well does it run with that?
More like 20 or 30 apps. I mean, like these are the amount of apps I have running right now.
And okay, so and tap.
Oh, look at that.
And tap on like the comic book reader to switch back to it.
So you can switch in Android by holding down the home button, and then your running apps come up and bring it back up.
Nice. Okay, that works.
Switch is fast. Yeah,
Switch is nice and fast.
And then with Sense UI, they build in some extra like expose like features like the Memo does. I think that's been a kind of a standard Sense feature for a while. They just brought that over to Android.
Nice.
They've replaced the dialer
really
in Android with a much nicer dialer. There's a lot of features they've added to this EVO 4G. Battery life.
Yeah, how is that? That
sucks. I get a half a day with 4G turned off. I get about 2 to 3 hours with 4G turned on.
Of active use or standby?
With 4G turned on, with just like, it's hard to say because I've been using the hell out of this thing. Except I've only made a few phone calls, but I have used it a ton, like to play with apps, use the camera and stuff like that. It's testing the data speeds, so it's been under pretty heavy usage. But I wouldn't leave 4G on normally. In fact, because of that, I added a little widget on my screen where I can toggle 4G on and off. That way I can say, all right, now I'm going to do 4G, and then it actually connects to the 4G network.
Right.
It's much more like an 802.11 connection.
Yeah.
It acts like Wi-Fi. I get a public IP address that I can see.
Right.
I get a signal strength. It also has 802.11n, which means file transfers are really fast over the wireless.
That's way cool. I dig that.
It also means that if you have an 802.11 router, if you have any G devices that attach to your 802.11 router, your whole router then runs at G. So every device you can get on N means your whole wireless network will run better.
Faster and faster.
Faster is better.
Yeah.
So
I like faster.
So now my 4G is on, but now my battery would die.
So the phone's going to turn off in about 12 minutes.
Yeah, before the end of the segment, the
it'll
phone
be
will
gone.
be dead.
Now that's actually really kind of disappointing. So like on the WiMAX side of things, so there aren't a lot of WiMAX devices. I mean, there just aren't. I mean, this is one of the first, but the first was really like the N810 WiMAX edition came out like 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. With that turned on, the battery life was about 7 hours of active use, using Wi-Fi, backlights.
I have not seen an Android
WiMAX
phone
rocking.
yet with good battery life. I don't know if it's something wrong with Android's power management or if
it's a design flaw.
You've got well. The other problem is you've got a pretty power hungry screen in this. This LCD type of screen is
it is
ultra
gorgeous.
bright.
That screen is I mean, like the N900 is great, but that screen blows it out of the water.
Really
That's
bright.
a gorgeous screen.
And then the 1 gigahertz Snapdragon. I don't know how much it sips, but I don't know if it's too.
It's a flaw with Android, man.
And then the other problem is I'm in a lower reception area, which
Android
means the antenna works harder all the time. But I do think
big
it's
giant
an Android issue.
big giant virtual machine. I mean, it's going to suck up more juice than you otherwise would. That's just how it is.
I'm essentially the worst case scenario because I run a ton of data heavy apps that are always going in the background. Like I use Google Locale and all that kind of stuff, or Latitude. I have about half reception here, which means the antennas have to work a little harder.
Yep.
But I would not say with 4G turned off, the battery life is at least as good as my Droid. With 4G turned off, I get about a day.
That ain't bad.
It works.
That's all right. That's acceptable.
With 802.11n, I still get really good data speeds. It's not as
so you just turn on 4G when you need it for a couple minutes.
Yeah. If I'm in a tough spot or if I want to tether, I could do that.
Yeah, that's all right.
Otherwise if you've been looking to get an Android phone, the Sprint service, I was a Sprint customer like
long time ago,
4 or 5 years ago, and I was not a happy camper. This time I got the Sprint service. They went through all of the early termination stuff with me, which is really reasonable. Then after I left, I had a phone call with Sprint. They walked me through my plan details, the warranty details, again, the cancellation stuff, which was really reasonable. They were really clear about it, and I've been extremely pleased with this guy. It's really great performance everywhere I've gone. My Droid, I'd probably end up rebooting it once every couple of days. I haven't needed to do that with the EVO. It's just been a great experience. It's probably, I think, one of the better electronic devices I've ever owned, with the exception of the battery life. So
it does look cool. I gotta say, I mean, it looks more like
big. It's almost the Hummer. I think the
it's
Droid
more like
XP
a tablet.
is bigger.
It's like a mini tablet instead of a phone.
It's a mini tablet.
Which honestly, I like that.
It's like those cars that are like SUV cars, those crossover cars. This is like a crossover cell phone.
You know what I'd love? I would love that hardware with a slide-out QWERTY keyboard. Because come on, I know you and a lot of other people dig the whole
I was
screen keyboard thing,
but when you go a screen this big, the virtual keyboard is as big as a physical keyboard.
No, I'm with you. I like to feel the buttons.
I hear you.
I like to feel it. So if you give me that, and get Android off of here and put on put on Mamo or Migo or hell, Ubuntu Netbook Remix with a phone app. Don't even give me a phone app. I'll just use Skype or something like that over 4G. Call it good and use that as my phone. That's honestly the biggest drawback for this phone for me is the Android.
And I'm digging Android right now, but
you love it.
I come and go.
A lot of our viewers love it. I know people think I'm an Android hater. I kind of am.
It does
I'm not
fit in
interested.
the pocket. If I stand up here, I'll do the pocket test.
So it's not that big.
It'll go in there, but
it's probably not going to fit in a lady's pocket.
Yeah, I mean,
like you know how women have
it's sizable,
small like pockets in their pants,
like almost fake pockets.
Dude, why do women pants have like pockets that are like 2 inches deep?
They got the short side of the stick on that one, didn't they?
Seriously,
short end.
I think what it is us men trying to keep the ladies down. We must make their pants.
Yeah.
Well, it's like all the women's pants designers are dudes, and they're like, dude, we can really pull a fast one over on them.
We can store so much more stuff in our pants.
Let's do this and make fun of them.
So if you wear loose enough pants, they're not too bad. I probably will end up rooting it because there's like a one-click root now. One more thing. So HDMI out the bottom here. See right next to the USB charger, HDMI out. Not bad. It actually will output 1080p video.
Really?
So you can load up that SD
now,
card.
does it output the whole experience, the whole
I
desktop?
haven't tested it yet, but it sounds like it does.
That would be interesting.
It sounds like it might.
Really?
Because I was reading online where a guy was saying this one application, when I launch it, the video out stops. And it was like some stupid app too. So he made it sound like, because if I could, this is part of the reason I decided to go. This was the final thing that I haven't tested it yet. But if I can hook this up to our capture system and people are interested in an Android action show,
you could get HDMI 1080 high def reviews. Oh, that'd be great.
Right? So that's a route we might look at going if people are interested. And if not, with the one-click route, I bet you I could enable it.
There's some way to get that working, because that would be really cool.
So now that Froyo
basically what you'd have is the Google TV, except portable, and you would make the Google TV hardware that they're talking about completely irrelevant.
That would be awesome.
That would be rad.
So a big thumbs up from me, especially with Froyo, and this will make the first non-Nexus 1 phone to get Froyo. I totally lucked out on that.
Yeah.
Because I was this close to going with the Droid X, but my Verizon coverage sucks here. And the Droid X, is not going to get Froyo until the end of the summer. The regular original Droid supposed to get it within the next week or so.
Wait a minute. That's Verizon.
Yeah.
That's Sprint.
And that's AT&T.
That's AT&T.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely going to get cancer, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
You've got every
literally
possible wireless signal
Yeah.
zooming through your body 24/7.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I don't have is a T-Mobile, but it essentially uses the same frequency.
Yeah, it's the same as AT&T. So you're maximizing your cancer-causing wireless per dollar.
See,
so
I don't
I'm really
pay for
proud
all
of
of
you
these.
for that.
My day job pays for the Droid here, and then I'm canceling the service here.
Yep.
And I'm switching to solely the EVO now. I was waiting for the ultimate phone.
Yeah.
And I think the EVO
Do you think that's it for you?
Yeah. So
that's not bad.
I'm a happy boy, and I recommend it. So and. By the way, Droid 2 is about to come out. It has a totally redesigned physical keyboard, looks a lot better, and also the Droid 2 will be rocking Froyo on the Verizon network.
Wow, you and I have gone very different routes with our phones.
But I swing around a lot. I'll probably come over to Migo.
Because I'm just about to cancel my phone service entirely.
Well, I would if I could.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna go purely the portable tablet in my pocket.
All right,
with Skype route.
Yeah, I agree with you, dude. If my call load allowed for that, I hate using the phone. So
I
would totally switch.
But whoa.
But this is like a little mini tablet browsing the web on this thing, and now with Froyo they included Flash, which you may or may not like, but it's on here now.
That's cool.
It really is.
I dig that. I dig that.
All right, Brian. That's my look at the EVO 4G.
And that brings us to the end of this painful
you
episode.
Powered through it, dude.
I did. I'm hurting. My right side is aching right now for drugs. That's what I'm aching for. I'm aching for drugs. So I'm going to go home in a minute, and I'm going to lay on the couch, and I'm going to watch nerdy TV shows and movies until I pass out.
Hey, you know what? It is Lucky Season 13, so we had to start it out with some pain, right?
It sure is. It's Lucky Season 13. So we kicked it off with an Android-heavy segment.
We'd like to know what you guys think.
I want to know what you guys think of that. I also would like to know what you guys would like to see. What are you guys interested in right now?
Yeah.
What gets you excited? What makes you angry? What makes you just freak out? Like, we want to know what you're interested right now. Yep. It's the summer. And summertime for Linux is quiet time.
You know what would be a good opportunity
Usually.
is if you're out there and you're involved in an open source project that you think is awesome, hit us up over at jupitercolony.com and we'll try to get you on the show and talk about your project, maybe over Skype or something.
There's so many great little projects out there. We would love to showcase some of the work, some of the smaller members in the community. And I'm not talking small like you're all midgets or anything, but we will give preference and priority to any midget developers.
Nice.
I'm just saying that straight out.
Project Morris in the chat room has been asking me for months to do a home Linux server show. And I can't decide between which FreeNAS isn't Linux, but OpenFiler or FreeNAS or build it yourself off a distro. If people want to see that and you've been experimenting with a project like that, again, let me know in the colony and we might run.
I've been building my own off of a distro. Mine's all Ubuntu server based.
Yeah, and that's kind of the route I would go if I was going to build my own. See, the one I have now is a pre-built factory machine.
See, I've actually started to tinker around with the idea of replacing my at-home Ubuntu server with a custom spun SUSE version using SUSE Studio. That way I have a always up-to-date distro that has all my configs, all my server settings, all the apps I want, and a distro package. So I've been thinking about that, and if we do that, we could do that, and then say, everyone, go grab this distro from Ubuntu Studio.
Oh, we're doing that, dude.
We shouldn't we?
It's going to take us a couple of weeks to get it together, but that's coming up.
Isn't that a great way to go?
Put
that. All of the best, most rockinest media streaming stuff, put all those packages in there. Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah,
that'd be just rocking awesome. So we got a lot of stuff happening at Jupiter Broadcasting. Over the last week, we've had some great Jupiter at Nights going on.
Thank you, sir.
We had one Jupiter Files because I've been out all week.
The ones that have been released, well rated. People, I think, are digging the
some people like
Jupiter
them.
Files.
Some people apparently very much hate UFOs.
What's the topic? It's a controversial topic.
It's a controversial topic.
Opinions stirred up.
We try and cover it, from a very middle of the road standpoint. We cover some crazy ass topics in the middle of the road. We try and be reasonable. Like in this show, we look at something reasonable, middle of the road, and I freak out about it. Jupiter Files is the opposite. I look at something like aliens just abducted President Clinton, and President Clinton is now an android.
That's interesting.
After being abducted by it, and I'm like, well, I don't see a lot of proof for that, but I guess maybe there's
possible.
Yeah, I'm not ruling it out. I don't have pictures that prove not yet. So, so that show will be back tomorrow. What time is Jupiter at Night on?
You got love in the chat room. So Jupiter at Night is 9 p.m. Pacific,
9 p.m.
Monday
Pacific.
through Friday or Thursday.
Nice. And then Jupiter Files is Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Pacific, which I think is like 1272
million hours
p.m. in Great Britain.
It doesn't really matter. You can go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar, and there's a link on that page to convert it to your time zone. So.
It's an absolutely great, fantastical bit of morphology. You can also check us out over on facebook.com/jupiterbroadcasting. There's Twitter, there's blogs, there's all sorts of things. But if you go to jupiterbroadcasting.com, there's links like down on the bottom right or something.
Yes, sir.
There's just like links over there. Just click them all, bookmark them,
magic happens.
Put them in your Syndicate-O-matic.
Google Reader.
And feedinate them.
Yeah.
You just want to feedinate until you're done eating them.
Yeah. Why not? Then it's automatic. Then you can automatic feed.
It's auto magic.
All right, Brian, I think that wraps up this episode of the Linux Action Show.
I sure hope it is, because, man, I am long-winded, but my chest is hurting.
All right, everyone. Well, you can tune in live every Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific, or you can catch it on the download Sunday evening. And until next week.
Wait. Before you tune off, someone in the chat room just wanted to point out that Brian Lunduke isn't British. I have no idea what's been happening in the chat room. I look over, Brian Lunduke isn't British.
But you know what? Correct statement.
If you would like to register brianlundukeisn'tbritish.com, you can do so over at godaddy.com with the Linux code.
Oh, yeah, nice, dude, nice.
Yeah, you like that? All right, we're done. Later.